live. All right. Wow. Okay. All right. We're starting to get some people coming in. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, we are starting to see people come on board, definitely. It's really good to be here, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Very much.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see everything, but I can't. So.
Oh, okay, okay. Yes, we have people rolling in. Maybe another minute. We can wait for people to come in. Trevor, do you have any plans for the weekend? We were just talking about the weekend a bit.
Oh yeah, so my son really likes Kira Major, so we're going to Tokyo Dome to see one of the live shows of Kira Major. So that should be fun. But other than that, maybe go to the park because indoor stuff is restricted a little bit. So, but good fresh air. But hopefully the weather will be good. It might rain, I think.
Yeah,
it's
starting to look like it. But oh, that's really nice.
Yeah, but that outdoor stuff is actually really good right now. It makes such a difference actually after you're able to get out. So I wish you the best of luck though with the weekend and the weather and everything.
Yes, yeah. No, I live near Yogi Park, so I like going to Yogi Park, and it's good for kids as well.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. So it looks like people are kind of joining in, and hopefully we can get more people attending kind of, as time progresses. But yeah, let me go ahead and kind of open up today's panel. So first of all, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today, and happy Friday. Another week just kind of shot by very, very quickly. I am glad to be seeing some familiar faces in the attendee list, by the way. But first and foremost, it is my honor and pleasure to be able to have and introduce Trevor, who is a partner of a major global professional firm in Japan. So if possible, Trevor, can you please go ahead and let the audience know who you are and what you do? Okay,
thank you. So yeah, my name is Trevor Tisseverasinghe. So it's a very long surname. Actually, I'm from the UK, but I was born in Sri Lanka. So that's why my name is very long. And so when I introduce myself in Japan, I always just use Trevor. But actually, Tisseverasinghe has a very interesting meaning. So Tissa was the name of a king. Vera means brave, and Singha means lion. So I like to think of myself as the brave Lion King.
Fantastic.
Nice.
And when I first came to Japan, my secretary made me a hanko of Yushi, which is like brave lion or brave warrior. So I still use that sometimes.
Wow.
So that's my name. But yeah, so I grew up in the UK. I started my career in the UK. So I did computer engineering as a degree, but decided to be an accountant because my parents were accountants. And then I did a couple of assignments to Japan, secondments with my firm. And this is my third time to Japan, and now I've transferred over. So I've spent about 15 years in Japan now. And my role is, so I still look after some audits of some global clients based in Japan, but I also spend a large part of my time doing consulting work with actually the mega banks in financial services. And another part of my role is actually I look after global mobility for our firm in Japan, which is people basically who come to Japan and also who we send out overseas. So quite a few different aspects, but interesting.
Well, fantastic. And I can't wait to learn more about you and, your background as well. So thanks so much, Trevor. And the next person I would like to introduce is my colleague, Zia. She is one of the people who will also be facilitating this interview today. So Zia, back to you.
Thank you. Well, again, welcome everyone, and I appreciate being here today. My name is Zia, that's 3 letters, so it's really short compared to Trevor's Tisseverasinghe. But I am from Trinidad and Tobago, which is a tiny island in the Caribbean. And I came to Japan quite a few years ago, looking to sort of diversify my experience in the world. And I came in as a JET teacher. But in my previous incarnation, I worked in the media, and I worked in film and television production, as well as advertising and editing. So that's kind of where my background comes in. And I'm just a person who's curious about the world. So I really enjoy speaking to people, using my creativity and my background to kind of infuse communication coaching. So I'm very happy, of course, again, for the trillionth time to be here, and looking forward to this discussion.
Great, me as well. And while we have Reina in, the webinar as well, I'd like to give you the chance to introduce yourself as well. You're going to be kind of interacting with some of the people asking questions, right?
Yeah. Thanks, Carrie. Yep, my name is Reina. I think I know a lot of you who are watching today. Good to see you all. I'm originally from the US, and I came to Japan about 6 years ago, working with SPARKDOJO ever since. And yes, as Carrie said, I will be monitoring the chat. So please send us your reactions. Feel free to send us questions, comments, what you think about what we're discussing, and I can respond to you. I can also answer any English related questions. If there's a word that you don't know, or if you're curious about what we're discussing and you can't quite keep up, then please let me know and I can help out. Thanks, Carrie.
Yeah, sure. And just lastly, my name is Carrie Reese. I've been working with SPARKDOJO for the past 4.5 years or something like that. And I'm also very, lucky to be able to work with Trevor in one of the projects that he actually leads and manages. And I meet so many wonderful people through this great experience. My background is actually in IT and computer science, but I also have a background in education too, which is actually a match made in heaven. I'm able to not only kind of speak the same language as many global professionals with Trevor, but I'm also able to kind of teach, coach, and support them as well using the educational background. So once again, it's a pleasure to be here. And looking forward to having a great conversation with everyone. So I will go ahead and pass the baton back to Zia, and we can go ahead and get this discussion going then. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, sure. So Trevor, one of the first things that we wanted to know from you is, as you said, you've had this big career shift, and your role right now encompasses many things, but what is it that you enjoy the most about the work that you do?
So there are, I guess, a number of aspects to my role, but one of the most things I enjoy is meeting new people and the client side, right? I do a lot of internal stuff as well, but meeting clients, understanding their issues, helping them solve their issues is probably very enjoyable. And then maybe next I would say is my role on mobility. I'm passionate about building the skill set of our people in Japan, and more from the perspective of, we have pretty good people, but I think as we look at our clients and the global landscape where everything is more and more globalized, right? And if we look at what Japanese companies are also doing, they're trying to become more global. And so in order to keep up with that, we need our staff also to be more, or to be able to operate in a more global environment. So mobility is a part of that, and a key part of that. And so I'm passionate about improving our staff's ability to operate in a global environment, which then has a knock-on effect of us succeeding in the market better with our clients.
I see. And just to put everything in perspective, if I were to break down this field of, or this concept of mobility, what exactly does it entail? Is it at a micro level, a macro level? What do we mean by this?
Very, very simply, it's basically people moving countries, right? So it's people we send from Japan to work in the US or UK or other parts of Asia. So every year we send a certain number of people outside, and then also we get people into Japan from the US or UK and vice versa. So it's basically the inbound and outbound into Japan of people. That's what I would say simply mobility is.
Thank you. Thanks for breaking that down for us. So you say you want to develop this ability in several different countries, companies, different arenas, I think. So what makes this possible? What makes an organization or a company particularly mobile?
It's not about the organization being mobile. So mobility is basically the tool to help people build the skills to operate in a global environment, right? So, for example, if somebody having grown up in Japan gets to go and work in the US for a couple of years, right? That will change their perspective, give them a better global mindset than just being in Japan, and vice versa. For somebody from the US coming to Japan also opens up their mindset. So part of it is opening up their mindset, but then also, you know, like communication skills, impact, all of that kind of stuff, right? And especially for the work that we do, being able to communicate with people from other countries and work on cross-border projects, all that is very, very important. And same for our clients. By mobility in my company, what I'm trying to do is to build that skill set in our people, or we have that skill set, but improve that skill set.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. We do have a question from a participant. Matsubara-san is asking, how many people actually use global mobility? I assume, yes,
Yeah.
in your company.
So every year we send maybe about 60 people, 60, 70 people. But so we have a target, right? Where we think that at least 10% of our staff should have a global experience. Now, we probably have about 6,000 or 7,000 people in Japan, and some of the businesses have already met that 10% target. So over the years, many people have had overseas experience. And so actually some of the business units are higher than 10%. But from an annual turnover perspective, yeah, it's probably 60, 70 people. Yeah. This is just out. Yeah.
Okay.
And then we probably have about 20 or so people in every year.
Okay, so you've talked a lot about the benefits that someone receives from getting that global mindset and really working cross borders. But what would qualify a person? What kind of skills or qualities would need to be at a high development for them to be someone who's great for that kind of path?
Yeah, so look, the most important thing is to have an open mind, right? And then obviously communication. So language skills are also important. But when I talk about communication, it's not just language skills, right? Communication is about how do you convey a message. And so a lot of people sometimes feel, oh, you know, if you have to do an overseas assignment, your language skills you have to be bilingual or trilingual, but that's not always the case. I think as long as you can communicate either by language or trying and writing or pictures or anything, as long as you can get the message through and are making the effort, I think that can qualify. Now, I think where some people have a challenge, especially when you look at the cultural differences, right? somebody from maybe the UK or US is normally a bit more vocal, whereas many Japanese maybe are not as vocal. And that can sometimes be misread by people from the UK or US. So for people in Japan, I would say that you have to probably change the way you interact a little bit in order to make the right impact, right? And look, I think being quiet sometimes can be misread, and I had the same challenges when I first started in my firm, right? When I started in the UK, I was quiet, I was a bit shy, and so I got a lot of feedback around making an impact. And I think in Japan, it's probably very similar. I see a lot of people who were like me, who sometimes, especially in a foreign environment, are a bit more reserved on making comments, or before they make comments, they want to be more short. But in a Western environment, it's sometimes more important to make an impact, and probably the right impact. So I always tell people, or one of the things I was coached on when I was younger was, when you go into a meeting, for instance, always make sure you have something to say or you ask the right questions. And asking a good question can make as good an impact about your capability as stating some facts and figures and whatever. So I think in Japan, one of the biggest differences I find is many people will go to a meeting and many will not say anything. And in a Western environment, I think that creates a negative impact as to why people attend. So what I try to coach even people who work with me is always, in any meeting, try to say something or ask a question. Right? And so sometimes it's a bit scary, right? So when I was younger, especially with senior people, but I think asking questions is a good thing.
Thanks. Yeah, that's actually some good food for thought. Getting different ways to just be vocal, certainly a benefit. I want to kick this to Carrie, actually. As an education professional, have you noticed this, and do you have any workarounds for it?
Absolutely, right. And I would be lying if I told you that I have the perfect solution. What I always try to do is, again, when it comes to encouraging people to kind of step outside of their comfort zone, as instructors, as coaches, what I feel it's very important to first kind of create the atmosphere to, again, encourage them to kind of, make mistakes and, try something that they wouldn't otherwise try, but also clearly communicate the value and the benefit, to them. So, you're not just stepping outside of your comfort zone and, I don't know, doing stuff that you wouldn't normally do just, to waste time. You're doing so because there is a clear benefit in the future. A lot of Japanese professionals I know are very interested in global mobility. And I think that clearly telling them how this might help get them there, I think is also kind of a motivating factor. So that's what I try to do.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Reina, have you ever noticed a focus area that someone can use to adjust their communication style in situations like this?
A focus area, meaning like a specific maybe skill set to work on, or
Yeah, that's right.
We have a tendency, I think, to really like skills and techniques because they're so concrete. And of course, skills and techniques are really important. But at the same time, I think the most important area to strengthen, as Trevor said, is just mindset. Just this feeling of, what, if I make a mistake, that's fine. I'm at least going to try to speak my mind, try to add value to the meeting or the discussion. That sort of way of approach to a meeting or a discussion or communication, I think, is the most important element. So I would say the mindset area would be the focus area for people to work on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an interesting point, right? Because I say in Japan, especially in the second language, people are a bit more shy or maybe reluctant sometimes to make a point. But actually, this whole issue of mindset and having the confidence is not just in Japan. And recently, we had a global program, right? I attended as a participant, and then I was a tutor on it as well. And the program was about how to building relationships with executives, right? And so it was for senior people in our firm, and there was a lot of content, so a lot of technical stuff, but actually there was one session around, or a few sessions around the softer skills. And two important things I learned from that, right, was one, when you're having a meeting or a discussion with somebody, and this was mainly at seniors, but I think it applies to everyone, the content of what you're trying to get through or present is only a part of the importance of that meeting, probably only 20%. The rest of it is around body language, impact, and various things. But another key aspect I learned actually was where they talked about building your status, right? And so what they mean by that is, when you go to a meeting with somebody senior, you always give them more respect, right? So if I go to a meeting with a CEO of a top 5 company in Japan, I automatically feel they are very important and I give them a lot of respect. But when you give somebody too much respect, it kind of lowers your credibility and your impact, right? And so the whole session was around how you manage your status, right? And so you shouldn't bring down the other person's status too much, but you got to elevate yourself as well, so that you're at the same level, and then you will be a lot more respected and have a better impact. And actually, I've experimented a few times, and it's actually had a good impact, because it's this unconscious mind, right? Unconscious mind. And I think especially in Japan, where it's very hierarchical, a lot of people, if somebody's older or more senior, they automatically give them maybe a lot of respect. And in Japan, that may be okay. But in a Western world, if you maybe lower your status too far, then you lose credibility. So, and it also has an issue on your impact. So I don't know how well that got through, because it's quite a complicated topic.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a difficult balance, I think, to find that right amount of status to show, and it also depends on your relationship with the other person and the situation and the context as well. But do you have some tips on how to better build your status in a certain situation when you're meeting with somebody very senior without disrespecting the other person?
Yeah, so actually, yeah, the way I've done it is, again, back to asking good questions, right? And I think I find sometimes many of my senior colleagues, if the client is very senior, they don't want to ask them too difficult questions or something that might embarrass them. Now, it's not about asking something that will embarrass somebody, but asking them good questions which they have an interest in actually then builds your kind of status as well. So I think asking questions is one way, but what they said was there are a lot of indirect ways where people build status, right? And they showed various examples. So for instance, a senior person turning up late to a meeting, okay? That is one way of saying, oh, I'm very important. And that can kind of build your status. Or the way you talk or give signals to other people. Also, there are lots of indirect ways where people establish status. And it's about maybe reading those signals and countering some of that to have the right level of status. So it is very complicated. And you're right, it depends on your relationship and others. But I think where I've had not strong relationships, by showing more confidence in the stuff I ask and I talk about, I've managed to maybe elevate my status, which has had a positive impact on building a stronger relationship.
I'm dying.
As well, not just Westerners.
I'm dying of curiosity, Trevor. When was the last time you attended a meeting late on purpose to elevate your status?
No, so I actually, I'm one of those people that hates starting late.
Okay.
I'm always on time, and I get very frustrated when people come late. And I have certain of my colleagues where I've coached many times, but they can't show up on time. I think personally, I think showing up late is counterproductive and rude, because if you're showing up late, you're wasting other people's time as well, right? So, but if somebody senior showed up late, even though I think it's rude, I probably wouldn't question it too much. But normally in Japan, people are on time.
That is one of
absolutely.
It sounds like building your status has a lot to do with emotional intelligence, self-awareness, awareness of others, relationship management. Do you consider that another one of the skills that's really good for mobility? And how do you suggest people develop this?
So I'm one of those people that maybe likes to talk less and listen more, right? And I think I like listening and observing. I look at body language. I listen a lot to what people say, and then try to learn from that, right? As to, if I say something, I look at people's reactions, and I also look at their body language and what they're saying, and then learn from it. So I think going back to having an open mind and probably practice. So I think listening is very important, but then you also need to react to that and then practice.
Okay. We can't ignore what's going on in the world right now and the way that it's affected work culture and business in general. So I wanted to know about the impact with global projects and working styles in your firm or in the professional environment in general. Who are the people who have thrived in this environment, and who are the people who have struggled, in your opinion?
So look, I think different companies are at different places, right? According or reacting to their working style. So some companies are very much remote working most of the time. Some companies are still, work from the office, depending on their culture, their capability, their technology, and so forth. For our firm, we are more in the bucket of remote working. And so especially a lot of our internal stuff is done remotely. So I normally work from home maybe 4 days a week, and then if I need to go in, I go in predominantly just for client meeting for my clients, who are not remote working. And so that means a lot of stuff we do in teams is done remotely. Now this has meant that for some projects or some global projects, we're able to bring in more global skills, right? Because rather than flying somebody to Japan, you can connect over video call or remotely. So it's meant, in a positive fashion, it's meant we've been able to bring maybe more diverse skill set to certain projects. Now, you asked the question about who's done well, who's succeeded, and who's struggled. I think the people who have succeeded are probably the ones who are able to self-motivate and also flex their style. So people who've been flexible. Whereas I think people who are a bit more reserved and needed a team environment or being next to physically in a team to motivate themselves probably have struggled a little bit. But saying that, I think if I look at my organization, I think majority are probably having a positive experience from remote working. Right? I think they've continued to do what they were able to do, but also had exposure to additional things, because I think doing or working remotely has opened up more opportunities for people. Yeah. But the people who are motivated by being in a team or physical presence, probably maybe they have some mental challenges, and so we need to think about more creative ways of connecting better with some of those.
Okay, and how has that changed the face of communication skills, and what works well for cross-border business?
From a communication perspective?
I think so, yes.
I think that hasn't changed, right? So we may be doing stuff through video, but the same skills, I think, are required. So having an open mind, making an impact. Now, how you make an impact over video versus in person, there might be some differences. But I think the core skills are still very similar. But you know, I was on a course, actually on the same training course I mentioned before. So one of the things they talked about was your presence when you do a video call, right? So some people maybe sit back and only half show their face or are too far from the screen. So one of the lessons was you make sure your presence on the screen actually is most of the screen, right, to make that impact. The other was a trick that, you know, in person, and this may not lend itself well for Japan, because eye contact in a Western world, eye contact is important, right? And so when you're doing a video call, eye contact is actually quite difficult. So one of the tricks is actually to look into the camera that you're talking into, rather than the screen showing the other people. And that gives the trick that actually you have eye contact with the person you're talking to. So there are certain times where you want to have eye contact in a Western kind of scenario. And so then looking into the camera creates that same trick, right? So there are a few tips, but I think the core principles are probably very similar.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know then, that this stuff translates beyond what's going on with our work styles right now, and what we have to do to communicate globally. We talk about some of these things in SPARKDOJO, of course, especially with using eye contact. And I think it actually makes it a little bit easier, because instead of looking at the faces that you're speaking to, you look at the lens, which then makes it less personal. So maybe that is also a benefit of trying to cheat eye contact with a lens.
Yeah, actually, personally, I find it a bit harder, because I have to remind myself to look at the camera, right? Because normally I'm looking at the person I'm talking to, which is not where the camera.
I don't know if the same thing applies to the rest of the people in this panel here, but for me, at least in Japan, many of my Japanese clients or counterparts actually don't enable their camera. I'm kind of wondering if that's a trend that any of you have noticed as well.
Yeah. I would like to say that it's only Japan, but recently I think there are even many people overseas that switch off the camera sometimes. But I think proportionally it's still a lot more in Japan, right? And again, maybe people are a little embarrassed about showing their personal space. And I think somebody made the comment that in Japan everyone's places residences are a little bit smaller, so they're a bit more cramped up and they don't want to show that. But I think nobody really cares, right, about the background. You can even change the background. You can hide the background. So I think in this remote working world, a bit more of a casual look is not frowned frowned upon. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Yeah, I think being able to see the person you're talking to is always nicer. And if you're talking, especially building a relationship, then you have to see the person. Otherwise, it's very tough.
Okay. So I guess staying around this same area, but shifting gears a little bit. When we think of people who are in a local environment or a domestic environment, especially in Japan, there are a lot of times when you hear there may be culture clashes with people in the working environment. Are there any strategies that you can suggest for people in Japan when working with expats or people who are doing cross-border work?
I think it comes down to the same things as before, right? Probably, so having the open mind, listening and looking at what some of the differences are. Maybe the other thing I would suggest is to choose some role models, right? Some role models that you think do things well, and maybe observe them, get tips from them, use them as a coach. And I use role models for a number of things, and I think using role models is a good way of learning, actually. And then practicing. I think the only way, my Japanese skills haven't improved as much as I would have liked them to from the first time I came here, because I haven't practiced as much. Yeah, I think to improve at anything, you have to practice.
Okay, yeah, it again is really good that we can sort of have the same kind of push to practice and open up and these kinds of things that just works for these situations where people are together and they're working on teams, and they must share communication and this kind of thing.
Can I ask a question? Are there any role models that you are interested in right now, or can you tell us about the way in which you choose role models, who is good for you, who you want to aspire to be?
Yeah, so I have a few role models in my firm, right? And I choose my role models based on who I have a good experience with. So if they interact with me and it's very positive, that's one thing. And then the other is when I watch them interact with other people or clients, and if I see that they've done well. So when I first came to Japan, right, learning how to interact with Japanese clients was something new to me. So I had to identify various colleagues who I thought were good at building client relationships and had a good impact at clients. And so I identified a few role models, went to lots of meetings with them to observe and also practice, and also got some input from them for coaching.
Mm-hmm. Great. Do you have any suggestions for people who don't have immediate role models in their working situations or workplace?
I think look at who you think is doing a good job at what you need to develop, right? Now, I think some people will say, okay, find role models in the public space, right? So actors or whatever. Personally, I think it's nice to look at that, but I always like to make things more practical. So for me, if it's something to do with work, I think I need to identify colleagues so that I can actually directly relate and make it more practical. Mm-hmm. So if it's something to do with work, then I would maybe look at who in your workplace or who in your colleagues you think are doing stuff well in the areas that you want to develop, and then observe them, work out what is it that they're actually doing well, and then maybe get some input from them as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
Yeah, good strategy. Speaking of this, I wanted to know sort of your thoughts on someone who's early in their career. especially since you've had sort of a breadth of experiences across quite a few fields. When you think of the skills and the knowledge and the experience that you have amassed, gotten over the years, what's the skill that you're most grateful for and you wish you had earlier on?
Oh, that's a good question. I think confidence, right? To do anything or try anything, and especially to take risks, requires some level of confidence. And as a professional, you always, especially early in your career, before you try anything or do anything, you want to be able to build a certain level of technical expertise or credibility before you can really have confidence in yourself. But actually, one of the skills I've learned more over the last few years, once I've started doing more senior roles, is to be able to have the confidence to try things even though you don't know all the background, all the detail, right? And so confidence is an amazing thing because it helps you do lots of things, but it's also it's quite difficult to build up. But I think if I could look back now, probably if I took more risks earlier in my career, it would have probably helped me develop confidence earlier as well.
Wow, that is like a tall order of, having someone develop this confidence and kind of risk-taking mindset.
But it's the same in anything in life, right? So even gambling, until you start putting more money and winning more, you don't want to put more money. Right?
Okay.
But you got to take risks. So high risk, high reward, right? But that was especially because I'm an accountant, and accountants are always conservative. Right?
Okay.
So it's harder. But I think, if I did you look at the most successful entrepreneurs, right? They are big risk takers. So to be able to win big, you need to take some risks. And sometimes our perception of what might be bad is probably bigger than what others perceive to be bad, right? So sometimes you got to, like, one thing, in the early parts of my career, I was always told that I speak too softly when I'm in meetings or in presentations, especially in presentations. And I always thought I was speaking quite loudly. So I was told I had to think that I was shouting. Right? So you have to maybe exaggerate more than you think sometimes. So it's not quite the risk, but it's related.
Yeah, certainly. Absolutely. Carrie, what do you think about this? What do you think about that concept?
I completely agree. I mean, again, the only way to develop is to really step outside of your proverbial box, to kind of step outside of your comfort zone. Actually, when I started to learn how to speak in front of people, I was actually very shy, very introverted. So I actually, that's the reason why I joined, for example, like Toastmasters. I was actually really bad, but now, speaking in front of people is second nature. So definitely.
Yeah, that's a good example, actually. So when I started my career, I was also, as I mentioned, quite shy. Although if you talk to my colleagues now, they wouldn't say I'm shy. I think I'm still probably shy, but I probably hide it better. But I think for presentations, the way I kind of changed or started improving was I became a tutor on many things. And when you tutor, you have to present. And so by doing it and doing it and doing it, that's how you improve your confidence in that. So.
Right. It's kind of like exposure therapy, where they just put you in front of the thing that you fear the most.
Yes.
And that constant exposure just gets you more relaxed and less stressed with the situation, right?
Yes, exactly. Same with learning language, right? People are reluctant to practice because they're embarrassed about making a mistake. And that's my excuse as well. And I should take more risks on my Japanese. That's why when I drink alcohol, I can speak better Japanese.
Right. Veritas and vino, right? You say the most truthful things.
We get the exact same comments from our trainees, right, Zia?
That's right. It's true. It's absolutely true. So I think you've talked about the benefits of, expanding your horizons and things like that to the individual. And we've talked about the skills that an individual would need to do this. But if we back away and we look at it on a larger scale, what's the benefit to the business world and the world in general of having people cross-border?
So it goes down to what I said before, that a lot of organizations are now global players, right? And even if we look at Japan, the Japanese market is shrinking, right? So a lot of companies have to look outside to expand their market. And so when companies are becoming more global, you have to have people who have the same ability to be able to support as employees or consultants or whoever. You have to have people who understand how to operate in a global environment to be successful. I was watching earlier, there was a small documentary about Costco, right? And so Costco's become really successful, and not just in the US, but also outside of the US. And there's a big discussion. The reason it came up is there's a big discussion in the US right now about minimum wage and increasing the minimum wage. Mm-hmm. And the Costco CEO was actually quite supportive. And so this documentary was about paying people a good salary, but still making good profits, right? And so he basically said, look, the organization is all about the ability of the people. You're only as good as your people. So if we take that, right, and organizations want to be global, they've got to have the right people in order for them to compete with others and be good. And I think it will also translate into better compensation. Earlier today, I was having a conversation in my own organization about how do we change the incentive scheme to incentivize people who are taking more actions around operating in a global environment, looking at going on assignment overseas, getting better incentivized actually on the program that Kerry helps with. And so, yeah, I think ultimately, if you have that skill set, it's a very in-demand skill set that will have an impact on compensation.
Very nice. Kind of way to put it in a way that sort of takes one of the bigger issues that are emerging right now, and showing the benefit of having not only organizations that are diverse, but also have good inclusion. So my question is, as individuals in this kind of large organism, we're all in our companies that are these teams, whatever the size, how can we influence our companies to have good diversity and to be, really inclusive?
So I think diversity and inclusion is now on the agenda everywhere, right? So I think all companies are taking action. I look at even, my clients, my Japanese clients, where I guess Japan is perceived to be one of the countries which is less diverse. But even those companies are putting it on the agenda and trying to do more. And in my organization, I think we are probably doing a lot compared to some of the others. And I think things are moving in the right direction, right? Organizations realize that in order to have the right skill set to solve problems, having a diverse set of views can bring you a better solution. Right? So I think people have recognized what the issue is and that they need to do stuff. Individually, I think it's about understanding some of the differences and accepting the differences and working with the differences, right? So recently we had a panel, a global panel in our firm actually on racism, and I think it's kind of linked with diversity, which made me think, you know, through my career around my experiences and if I've experienced racism and other things, right? And I think I've been quite lucky that I haven't experienced direct racism, but there are a lot of instances where there is indirect racism, right? And it's mainly because people don't understand some of the differences and the impact of what they're doing. And I classify racism basically as if you are made to feel uncomfortable or different. There are different I guess definitions of racism, but for me personally, that is it. So I think it's about understanding that everybody is different, accepting those differences, and also not making people feel uncomfortable. And I think Japan is actually moving in the right direction in that, because I think there's a lot of action being taken.
Nice. That's really encouraging to hear that, you know, in your observation and your estimation, almost every company that you can think of is working to ensure that there is a good balance of their human resources. And
that may be a little bit biased because I work with maybe the big companies.
Fair.
So, yeah, maybe once you go below the big companies, there might be less progress. But yeah, based on my experience with the big companies, yeah.
You know, in my estimation, it is something that I have also noticed as well. I noticed that, you know, people are generally, they understand the benefit of having diverse teams. They hear about it, and I think it's been internalized. So, you know, I do agree with you that there's definitely a push from, you know, all quarters to, you know, ensure that companies are diverse and inclusive. I want to actually open things up and remind people now, we've slipped into our Q&A time a little bit.
Oh wow, time flies.
I know the discussion's been going pretty well. But I just want to remind all of our participants, please do send your questions for Trevor. Yep, definitely. I was about to say you can use the Q&A tool, or
people are already using it.
That's right. Or you can use the chat as well. Ask us anything, all of us here, of course. We have a question from Leo, and Leo asked, what do you think is the most fun part of working in a cross-cultural environment and working with people who have different cultural backgrounds or values?
Yeah, so look, I think one of my principles is that you always have to learn something new, right? Otherwise you get stuck. And learning something new is what motivates me in my job as well. So learning and understanding about different cultures and different people and different views is very interesting for me. And to solve any problem, I think my style is normally to listen to different views and get to a solution based on the different views. So to me, getting that diverse perspective, which is what working with a cross-border or diverse team brings, it gives me added motivation.
Nice. I want to open it up to Reina and Carrie, actually. I want to hear what you guys think about this as well.
I completely agree that diverse views and approaches. I remember I had an opportunity to work in Iraq for a few months as at a media company there. And it opened my eyes. The concept of time, concept of family, awareness of what work is, what life is, completely different there. And I learned new perspectives and new approaches. I became a more relaxed human being, oddly, after going to Iraq. So it did change me. I think that is the benefit of working across borders.
Yeah, no, and yeah, Raina, I don't have the, the same experience with you going to Iraq, but I have to say that coming to Japan, and then after coming to Japan, I went back home not the same person. And it actually hit me upon my return to the United States. I took so much for granted. I didn't know anything really outside, of the US, and I'm embarrassed to say that, but I truly do see the value as well.
Nice. Yeah, completely agree. There's a certain curiosity, and a certain, as we keep saying it, a certain openness. I tell people all the time, this is this feeling inside me. I want to see everything. I want to touch everything. I want to smell everything. I want to, get out there and really experience fully. And that is the best thing doing it, working in teams, because you can vicariously experience things through other people as well. And so, just working with that and encouraging that, I think, is really fun. We have another question. It says, before COVID-19, it was very natural for people to meet in the office with their teams. So it was easy for them to feel that they belong to the same team, same company, working with that pep and motivation. But after COVID-19, when things have gone remote, many companies may have, or their employees may feel that it's challenging to be engaged and feel like a complete team, really. Do you know of anything special to keep a team strong under the circumstances of isolation and separation?
Yeah, no, this is one of the areas that we continue to have a challenge on, and there's no one right answer. We continue to try different things. So having online drinking sessions with the team, trying to play some virtual quizzes and give prizes, having team connections at least on a weekly basis or even every day sometimes, depending on the project. We had some teams where they were connected online all the time, like similar to if they were in a room together. But then we had some issues around that some people felt uncomfortable, so that was stopped. But I think it's an area that we struggle with, right? So we have also seen some people change job, because I think by not being physically together, you kind of lose that allegiance a little bit. But also I think COVID has probably made people given people more time to think about what they're doing and their life and where they want to be. And so some people have just changed careers, right? But I think that keeping a team together and keeping a team motivated has been one of the big challenges. And I think we're continuing to learn and try different things, but it's still, I think, some way to go.
All right. Yeah, I think that's a pretty all-encompassing answer, and it makes sense. Makes a lot of sense, actually. Okay, so I think that's it for the questions. Carrie or Raina, do you have anything that you'd like to add before we wrap up this afternoon?
No, I had never heard of teams just connecting the whole day together, like being online together. So that is a really innovative idea. I guess it kind of works for some teams, but not really so much for others. I would hate it, honestly.
Yeah, I think some of the ladies that complained.
Oh, I see.
Maybe a little intrusive, I don't know. So, and finally, I'd like to hand it to Trevor. Last words for us. Anything that you think we need to know?
Anything you need to know? No, I think we talked about a lot of good stuff, right? What I would say is there's a big need for globalized people, so people who can operate in a global environment. Since the first time I came here, there's been more foreigners coming to Japan, but I think there is probably a greater demand right now for Japanese who can think more globally and operate more globally. So I think there's a great opportunity ahead of many people. So please have an open mind, try new things, take some risks, and have the confidence, right? One of the things that frustrates me is when our foreign officers probably don't get the right view of people in Japan because maybe they are quiet or don't say something or don't make the right impact. And I think Japan is a strong country. You know, it's still the third biggest economy, and Japan has got to make the right impact on the global stage. So I hope there are more Japanese that can make the right impact in a global environment.
All right. Well, you heard it here, people. There is a need for lots of players to come in from the Japanese side and operate in the global environment. So it's definitely somewhere that you should keep your eyes on. I'd like to say on behalf of all of us here at SPARKDOJO, thank you very much, Trevor, for lending your time, your expertise, your knowledge to us. And I appreciate everyone who has participated today as well. We hope you got something insightful out of this, and we will continue to share with you as we move along. Thank you very much from everyone in the chat too. And please have a good afternoon. Goodbye.
All right, take good care, everyone. Thank you very much, Trevor.
Thank
Have a
you.
good weekend. Yeah.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.